Hello, my name is John Brink. We are with being on the Brink, the podcasting from downtown Prince George. And for all those people around the world, Prince George is the capital of northern BC, an absolute fabulous place, and a beautiful winter day here, a little bit of snow, but we're moving towards spring, and beautiful view over the city of Prince George. My guest today is a friend, Joe Elliott, and we'll have an exchange of what Joe has been doing here in not only in BC but in other places. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, John.
Tell us a little bit about with all due respect, I always say I have no accent, but that's not so, obviously. But we both have. And where are you originally from?
Originally, I was born in Glasgow, Scotland, in the United Kingdom. But I was 22 years in the Royal Navy, which my accent calmed down, believe it or not. It used to be a lot stronger. And for the last 9 years, I've lived here in the beautiful British Columbia in Prince George.
Yeah. So when you spend your time in the Navy, you were in Scotland?
No, I was based in all over the UK, actually. Most of the time down in England, places like Cornwall, and a helicopter search and rescue base, and other times, and sometimes in Faslane or Rosyth, but majority of my naval time was down in Portsmouth in Hampshire, which is about an hour and a half from London.
Yeah, northeast of London?
No, southwest.
Oh, southwest of London.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So the
on the English Channel.
Right. And then so you were on a ship of some sort, or?
I spent most of my career either as an aircraft mechanic at the Royal Navy, so either in naval air stations, helicopter bases, or on board aircraft carriers. I've done 3 aircraft carriers in my time.
Yeah, and so that was all part of NATO as well, and.
Yep, as you know, the United Kingdom, the British Royal Navy. Even though I'm Scottish, Welsh, Northern Ireland, and England are all part of the United Kingdom, and
yes.
We're all part of the British Armed Forces. So yeah, Royal Navy is part of NATO. Sorry, the United Kingdom is part of NATO. Yeah, done a lot of time. I've done a lot of exercises with. Stanag 4 chant, which we went to places like the Netherlands or Belgium or France or Norway.
So what brought you into the Navy, Joe?
Well, all my family were my grandparents. My grandfathers were they were British Army, World War II British Army guys. None of my family were Navy, but for some reason. Even though I lived in Glasgow, which is a city of 1 million people, for some reason I always felt the need to go to sea. I always wanted to join the Navy. Yeah, just I believe it's still in my blood. I still miss the sea. I still miss the Navy.
So how old? So it was not mandatory to be drafted. Eh?
No, there was no conscription when I. And there's still no. There's not been conscription since the late 60s, I think, was the last time we got rid of conscription in the UK. Yeah. But no, it's a volunteer. I joined at 18. And I've done 22 years. 22
years. So then you decided to leave, or did you then somehow retire, or?
I retired from the Navy. Most people do in the Royal Navy. In the British Armed Forces, we normally do 22 years. Some can extend. But I done my full term of 22 years, and I went into other jobs, including train mechanic and all sorts of things.
So you stayed in England then once you retired from the Navy?
I was staying in Scotland actually at the time.
In Scotland?
Yeah.
And then what else did you do there?
I became a train mechanic. I was a heavy duty train mechanic.
How did that all happen? Because that was a long way away from that floating ship.
Yeah, but engineering. There's a lot of veterans that don't think they've got transferable skills, and my transferable skills was a little bit in engineering, but communication as well. So I ended up going into contracting and railway. Ended up I even ended up in Sweden, working in Sweden as a train mechanic at one point before I came here.
Oh my God, that was different too. Did you just go there for a short period of time?
I was only there 6 months, but it was just before I came to Prince George. So I came from one cold country to another in the middle of winter.
So then, what brought you to Canada, and in particular, once coming to Canada, to British Columbia, and all places in British Columbia, to Prince George?
My girlfriend is from Prince George. So
that will do it, right?
Yeah, women will do it every time.
Yeah.
And my partner, Sarah.
Is her name Sarah?
Yeah, parents Sarah. And we have 3 beautiful daughters.
Yes.
And we just recently had a baby last year, so my baby's now 8 months.
Now, I think you had one baby that was born at New Year's Eve.
Yep, she was our first kid here, Catherine.
In 2014?
Yep, New Year's Day baby from Northern BC.
Yeah.
And so she's 8, and we have Grace, who's 6.
Yeah.
They've all either
all
got...
girls?
All girls. I've got a girl back in Scotland as well, an older girl.
Yeah.
All my girls have either got red hair or blonde hair, so I'm in for a bit of pain when I'm older.
Yeah. So then you came here, and 10 years ago to Prince George.
9 years ago, yeah.
9 years ago.
Yeah.
And you came to Prince George because your girlfriend was here in Prince George. How did you get to know her? Because was she in Sweden?
No, she was she came to an outdoor centre. Scout. I used to teach outdoor activities in the Scout Centre, and she was
here
staff.
in Prince George.
No, in Scotland. She came over. How many years ago?
Oh,
it must be 25 years ago. She came over for a holiday.
Yeah.
For a working holiday at the Scout Centre.
That's where you got to know her.
That's what I initially met her. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you had a long distance relationship.
Oh no, we reconnected years later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then you came to Prince George, and 9 years ago. So what were you going to do in Prince George? What did you do in Prince George?
I had no idea what I was going to do at the beginning, but I just wanted to live here and be with my partner. Yeah.
So what did you then end up doing once you came here?
Well, I'm now a medic. So I work sitting in an MTC, a mobile treatment centre, and I go to wherever the contract is, whether it be pipeline, whether it be in a building site, whether it be oil and gas and a fracking site. I'll get sent out here, there, and everywhere.
So that's what you really do.
That's
right?
my real job. Yeah.
Yeah. So you are a medic.
OFA 3 medic. So
how do you call it?
It's OFA 3 medics. The qualification.
OEF.
OFA.
Okay.
Occupational first aid.
Oh yeah. Okay.
But yeah, that's my real job as such. But obviously, at the same time, when I first came over here, I went to the local agent, and I ended up helping my fellow veterans. I ended up realising that these guys needed help, and that's where my whole veteran career kind of took off. It wasn't really meant to be a career. It's ended up being that kind of thing.
By coincidence, more or less, and obviously
just meeting fellow veterans. And realising that there was not enough help, and not enough information out there to help them. So I started doing what I do. Yeah. With my veterans.
Yeah, and obviously you've been extremely active in that area as well.
Yeah, I ended up. We founded a national section across. I joined the local Royal Canadian Legion here in Prince George, and then I started using social media through Facebook. Started reaching out to other veterans groups and building networks of veterans and their families and their supporters to help each other.
Throughout?
I'm across Canada.
Wow.
Yeah, our network is huge. There's plenty of resources out there, but not every. What there's there's not enough information.
Yeah.
And there's a complete blind spot for some veterans to reach out for help.
Right.
So eventually somebody might say, "Oh, Joe knows somebody," or "I know a guy that knows a guy," and when we go through that, it's just communication and connecting people with the right resources.
Is the main platform Facebook then?
Yeah, it is. Operational stress injury through the Legion was a section that we founded. I said a national section.
So if they're looking, somebody that may be listening to our program here that would be interested, how would they find the website?
Well, connect with the Royal Canadian Legion.
Okay.
That's it, and connect with your local Royal Canadian Legion. Each province has provincial headquarters as well. Operational stress injury has a website as well.
Right.
But if you get any questions, just contact the local Legion, and they can point you in the right direction of someone that will help you with operational stress. Operational stress injuries, let me explain, is a modern term for any injury that you've received in your service.
Right.
That might be PTSD, that might be a physical injury, maybe you damaged your knee or your back, or there's a whole bundle of military trauma, it's military sexual trauma going through the courts just now, actually, especially with our Canadian veterans. So we have got the service officers, we've got professional service officers that will help you access the services that you need either through Veterans Affairs or Vets Canada or other organisations or professional organisations. But number one place you go talk to your doctor if there's an issue. If you don't think he can help you, talk to Veterans Affairs.
Yeah.
Or say a local service officer, or just ask me, come and give me a call.
Yeah.
If you look me up, you can find me on the Facebook.
Yeah.
And I'll help you get the access to the right services you need.
Point them in the right direction.
Yeah,
right?
I'm not a counsellor. I'm not a psychiatrist.
No.
I'm just Joe. But what I do know is I know the right guys to put you in contact with, or the right people, maybe male or female, obviously. And that's what I do.
Yeah, and obviously that's where your activity has been.
And raising awareness of all the services that are out there, raising awareness of causes that need help. If there's a fundraiser that's for a particular organisation that is obviously helping veterans and their families, like Honour House here in BC. It's a house in New Westminster in Vancouver. The house is over 100 years old, and it's a bit like Ronald McDonald House. It's got 11 apartments, and basically what they do is they provide accommodation for veterans and their families if they've got medical appointments in Vancouver. So
there is a place to stay? And
yeah, it's all free of charge,
and
it's a beautiful facility.
Yeah.
But there's an organisation that it's very close to my heart, because my 3 kids had medical appointments before Christmas.
Yeah.
As you know, you were very kind and grateful to help us with. We were stuck with our flights. We couldn't get down because for those that don't know, the roads were cut off in Prince George or BC from Vancouver, and the only way we could get my family down to Vancouver was to fly, which you were very generous in covering the cost, and very grateful.
Yeah.
My family had 11 medical appointments in 13 days.
Yeah.
But we stayed at Honour House for those 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And that was I can't even begin to imagine how much that would have cost me for having such a large family.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of organisation that deserves our support and our acknowledgement. Actually, there's a lot of people who don't know it's there. It's not just for veterans and first responders, it's also for first responders here in BC, but people don't know enough of it.
And that's still very much the case, right? So that and hopefully the podcast will also help towards bringing a little bit more light into that. A lot of times, because in the minds of a lot of people, the Veterans Affairs looks at the Second World War, which is now ended in 1945, so that is 70 some odd years ago. So there are not many people around anymore that were part of it, but still the Legion is still very, very active in many, many other ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good point, John. Veterans, especially Canada, veterans are the very fabric of our society, of what Canada was founded on. It was because of Vimy Ridge, the 5 battalions getting together for the first time ever, First World War, fighting at the Vimy Ridge, that Canada was born. 100,000 Canadians were killed or injured in World War II, 100,000. And then you go to Afghanistan, and you've got 137, I think, Canadians killed. So when you say to a Canadian, what's a veteran? There's still this conception of the World War II veteran, or my granddad, or a Korean War veteran. We've got veterans.
Vietnam.
We've got veterans in this town that are 30 years old. We've got Afghanistan veterans that are 30 years old. We've got Afghanistan veterans that are first responders here, whether it be BC Ambulance or whether it be or the fire department. But it's not just it's the first responders and the veterans that are struggling through mental health challenges,
including police,
RCMP, first responders and LEOs, law enforcement. It's not just them. Their traumas the ones that have traumas, can be passed on to the families.
Yeah.
So the families can live through this as well, and it causes an incredible amount of strain out there. But veterans and first responders when someone is hurt, they've got that get up and go to help them, and that's what they do when they're hurt.
How do they contact them? Also through the Legion? Yeah,
they can contact through the Legion. They've also got their own reps, but the problem with that is very, very prevalent with first responders. They don't think they've got a problem. They think they don't deserve help with their problem.
Yeah.
They'll always put someone else first. They'll always put a teammate first. They don't realise they've got a problem till they're way down, till they get to the stage where, okay, maybe I've got a problem.
Yeah.
It took me, I was diagnosed with PTSD 5 years ago, and I didn't think I had a problem.
Yeah.
I thought I was just a normal, typical guy. Turns out there was a problem, and I was diagnosed through Veterans Affairs Canada. They got me a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
And I got diagnosed, and they confirmed my PTSD.
Yeah.
I then went on a Veterans Transition Network course, which saved my life, and it saved my family.
Yeah.
And now I have another kid, so I'm very grateful for that. But I got to the stage where, I don't have PTSD. I help everybody else out with PTSD.
Yeah.
I'm totally blind to what was going on.
Yeah.
But veterans are horrible. It takes, on average, 10 to 15 years for a veteran or first responder to say, I might have a problem.
Yeah.
And that might be through various bad behaviours.
Yeah.
Including heavy drinking or drugs, or other destructive behaviours that's not good for them. But eventually it catches up. You can't just lock it away.
No, the same actually. As you know, I was born in Holland in 1940, and during the early stages of the Second World War, and in my family, my dad was called up to the Dutch Army in April of 1940 when the German Blitzkrieg ran over Holland, and then he was the last they saw of him was when he was in Rotterdam at the time that it was bombed. But for 5 years they didn't know if he was dead or alive, and my mother had three children. Myself, I was the youngest, born in 1940, and then a sister 1 year old, a brother 1 year old. But then with her growing up during the first 5 years of war was difficult, and we were in northeastern Holland, right underneath the, one of the main flight routes into Germany when the Allied forces were bombing it. And it would be very common to, especially after mid-1943, when there were daytime, nighttime bombings, that there were 300 airplanes in the air.
Yeah.
The sound of those airplanes,
you will never forget.
You'll never forget, and it's beyond imagination what it would possibly sound like. And then seeing, even as a 5-year-old, we had virtually no heat. We would go, and I remember still from the time that I was 4 years old, just before the hunger winter of 1944, 1945, and thousands of kids and families died.
Starvation because the Nazis just starved them out.
Correct, stop the food going into Holland, and we would go out every morning with gunny bags, sacks, into the railroad yards, trying to find anything edible or burnable, and to bring it home. And adults wouldn't do that because they would get shot. With us, they tried to kick us out of there, but we would do that every morning. And then I remember always that feeling of hunger that always stayed with me, even now. And then in the whole house, we had just one little pot heater that was, where they would burn. It was really hot in that particular spot. The rest of the house was cold. And then, and then anxiety, because there was always anxiety. When there were planes overhead, my mother a lot of times would take us out, not to see because we knew what it was, but just it was safer outside than inside. So all of that, and then seeing far too many dead bodies and things that would go wrong, and it's always something that stays with you. So PTSD, even to survivors of war,
without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah. My family, as you know, John, is Dutch as well. They're from Neda. Yeah. And the stories I've heard, I'll tell you a story. I don't think I've ever told you this story. My first foreign port to run ashore was Amsterdam. And obviously there's a lot of fun in Amsterdam for sailors. But every time I go to Amsterdam, I tried to go to the Anne Frank Museum. Yeah. And it was closed. So I'm heading back towards town, and there was a little bar called the Lynchpin. Unfortunately, it's no longer there. And it's just your typical rectangular, boring room with a little corner bar in the corner. And it was an old couple. It was a townhouse. The bottom floor was the bar. It was a townhouse, like 2, 3, 4 floors above it, where the family lived upstairs, but the business of the bar was downstairs. And this older gentleman and his wife were fantastic hosts. And I was with two of my shipmates, an Irish boy and a Scottish boy. And they were so friendly, so welcoming. Your typical Dutch welcome. But and then I noticed tattoo of numbers on his arms. Yeah. And I said, "Excuse me, sir, is that what I think it is?" Yeah. And he said, "Come here." And he took me. It was a tattoo, a long number of his arm, which was a concentration camp. Yeah. And he took me behind the bar, and the actual bar was probably 8 feet by 4 feet, 5 feet wide. Nothing big at all. Right. And he lifted up a trapdoor, and he said, look under there. And there was a crawl space of about 3-4 feet. Yeah. And it's just mud. Yeah. And he said, me, my family, my brother, my sister, my mother, my father, we stayed here during the war. And I'm looking at it. So what happened was during the day, they would hide under the floor. and not say a word and be quiet, and they're not eating, they're just lying there. The German soldiers are above, and they're eating, they're drinking, they're having fun. And then at night time, let's say they're literally a kilometre away from Anne Frank's house, so they're right in the centre there.
Sure.
And then at night time they would come out and they could go and get some food, and other families were feeding them. He said most of the war we stayed under here. So at 3-4 years they were sleeping, or they were hiding under the floorboards.
Yeah.
And I said, so what happens? Well, in the last winter, when Holland was starving, when Amsterdam was starving, and people were eating tulip bulbs, he said the Germans, the Amsterdammers, they said to the Nazis knew the invasion was coming, and they were trying to kill every single one of the Jews off, and all the undesirables.
Wow.
And they said to the Dutch people, so for every Jew you give up, every person you give up, we'll give you a loaf of bread.
Sure.
And that loaf of bread could keep your family alive for a week.
Yeah.
The Allies are coming. You could be free. The war could be over next month.
Yeah.
But you might starve. So he said that his whole family, they all get taken away. And I said, so what happened? He said, well, I was the only one to come back.
Yeah.
And but you're living here.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah. I said, how can you forgive?
Yeah.
How can you? He said, you've got to. Otherwise, that hatred eats you up.
Yeah.
And I had tears in my eyes. And I'll tell this story every time it comes up.
Sure.
Because these stories have to be told. People forget that this torture, this inhumanity happened.
Yeah.
But there's a man who's lost his whole family, and he married a Dutch woman, he married another Jewish woman, and they lived there afterwards, back in Amsterdam.
Exactly.
It's a beautiful outcome, but terrible story.
Yeah, and so that's how it was. And what I always do is I've made it a habit of, and I did it for about 10 or 12 years, that every November the 11th, Remembrance Day, or that week, I talk to students, in particular some of the schools, about what does it really mean, that 2 minutes of silence, and what was it like there then, and how fortunate we are, and taking things for granted. And I think it is very important to share those thoughts with them, and
those real stories about real people.
Yeah,
living history. This is still relevant history that
exactly.
Some people have forgotten.
And that's the important part about it. So I've done it all throughout the province, and I try to do it every year for a number of schools. But some of the things, I still remember as a kid, and I was, 4 or 5 years old, and seeking food, and then, at the end of the war, we were liberated by the Canadians on April the 12th, 1945. And the soldiers, one section of the Dutch or the Canadian Army was stationed just from here, no further than across the street here. Small section of the Canadian Army Red Cross, and we would go there every morning at daybreak, and they fed us bread and the butter and cheese, and the cheese and the butter was bigger than the bread, and everybody was called Johnny, and we all really couldn't communicate, but we could, so it made such an impression on me that I always knew.
But you can still smell that bread and the butter.
Yeah, still do today. And from there on in, I always knew I would go to Canada, the land of my heroes, so. But just before they came in, the Canadians already were getting close to liberate us. I remember, the Germans, as they were retreating, they had nothing left, right? All their cars were gone. They had they took all the bikes.
They stole the bicycles, yes.
All the bicycles,
yeah,
and then they blew up all the bridges that they could, and we had a bridge right in front of our house. And then and it's in my book, but
my auntie and my aunt, she's from Scotland, but she married a Dutchman.
Right.
And I went there and every time she saw a German on a bicycle, my granddad wants his bike back. But you know, they can make a joke about it, but it was really, because they used anything to get away from the Allied advance, because we went in fast.
And really, Joe, after the Second World War, within a few years, we already were interchanging between the schools across the border.
Yeah.
Because, but I always say we all were victims, so it was difficult, but there were no deep resentment.
Without a doubt. I mean, there's a lot of Eastern European countries that they had no choice. The soldiers would march in, put a gun to their mother's head and say, "You're joining the army, or we'll kill your family." And there's people on the wrong side of history.
Yeah.
But there was no choice.
No.
Especially Germany. They still suffer that today. They still suffer the frustration, the anger, and sometimes the shame. Yeah. But they were just led by the wrong man, unfortunately.
Exactly, and they became victims as well.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So then when I was born in 1940, so when I was 18, I was drafted into the Army. In my case, I was drafted into the Air Force. And
we won't say it. No, I never realised all these years I've known you. I never realised you were an Air Force veteran. And I thought, my God.
Yeah.
No, hats off to you. But you weren't just Air Force, were you?
No.
You were an MP.
Yeah, I was Air Force Police Special Forces.
Special Forces, right?
Yeah. And so, but I always wanted to be a pilot, right? So that's why I went into it. Why they put me into Special Forces, I don't know. The only thing that I can think of is that I was relatively small for my size, is that I was a brown belt judo. Maybe that put me, I don't know. But Special Forces was interesting in police and security. Our base training usually was around 3 months. This was at least 6 months. And it was pretty
intense.
stringent.
Yeah, it would have been.
And they said, your chances of survival in a war are very limited because a lot of times we would drop behind enemy lines.
Yeah.
And so I was in there for 2 years and
so you're parachute trained as well, are you?
I'm a pilot as well.
No, a parachute.
A parachute, yeah.
And you dive?
Yeah.
Right. So you're a bit of an action man then, yeah.
Yeah. And the parachuting then was a bit rougher than it is today. I tell you.
Yeah, I've jumped in a military. You would have jumped in a military round parachute where you hit the ground pretty fast. I know. I've done that.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I did, and right after my training, I was, one of the things that we did, other than the basic things, training, always be ready. It was for protection of the radar bases. That was the defense line. There were bases throughout Holland and Belgium and France protecting us from potentially Russia. And one of the places where I was stationed at one point, initially I was trained on an Air Force base and then close to it, and then after the training based on a base in northeastern Holland, and that was a defense base where if you saw it, I took one of my daughters down there at one time and I said, you see in the middle of the land there, you see this small concrete thing sticking out, looks like a bit of a house. Underneath it there were 6-8 stories of concrete where you could have at least 2,500 people.
Jesus.
So we would go down there. It had a steel door that was bomb-proof that would slide open.
So what was the purpose? To let the Russians
line
in first and then pop up?
Yeah, identify.
You're right.
More than anything. And so, and then the other thing that we did is quite an experience for an 18-year-old, that I had. I was trained with, a carabine rifle, but then Smith & Wesson, but also an Uzi, 9mm.
In those days, that would have been brand new, state of the art.
Yeah. And then the other thing that we did is, that if there were airplane problems, one of the first things that I went to was, a jet had come down, and we had to
go secure
we were
the
first
site.
ones there.
Yeah, and secure the site.
Secure the site, and then the pilot unfortunately didn't make it out and ripped off his helmet, and so that kind of thing. And then other things that we did is, as you likely know from Holland, substantially below sea level, we were still draining certain areas, and during the Second World War, what would happen if bombers came back from Germany, going back usually into England, what they did is, to avoid flak from the ground, they would fly over water as much as possible. And so we found several planes that had ditched in the sea right around
the IJsselmeer?
Pardon me?
In the IJsselmeer, yeah.
That's absolutely what it is.
Yeah, I've been at the IJsselmeer.
Yeah. So as they drained it, it would come back to the surface. There were several of those that then always required, the
recovery of the bodies. And
some of them had been there for a long time. But so that was, and then the other part, just before I put in my 2 years, it was in 58. I went in 1960. I came out. Was the time that Indonesia had invaded Dutch New Guinea. And we were ready to go, so we would have gone the following Friday, and then somehow they reached an agreement, and they said, well, I said, probably it's not worth it, so forget about it, give it to them or whatever. But we were close to being deployed into, there.
Very, very interesting times in the early 60s with the Cold War.
Yeah.
Which is kind of starting again, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, delicate with Ukraine, and although I kind of think that I'm on the optimistic side about it, but still it's always somehow there, right? But the other part about it is that I think from all the bombers flying overhead and all the other things, I developed a love for flying, and I've had about 3 or 4 different planes over the years. Got my private pilot license in Watson Lake in the Yukon in 1967.
That's way up there, isn't it, on the Watson Lake? Yeah.
Yeah. And then, and even now, still, I'm still working on, for fun more than anything, doing my commercial license in Victoria.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I always say I want to fly because I'm trying to get a job at WestJet. At 82, that's not going to happen.
Well, I don't know. Are they allowed age discrimination these days? You're 82. That's.
I will be 82 in November this year.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's off to you.
But since we both veterans.
Yes, I know. I did, when you told me that, I did swear, because I was like, all these years, I never knew you were a veteran. So hopefully the next buddy check coffee I do, once we get one going, I'll invite you. Hopefully we can schedule that. So one of the things I do is buddy check coffee. Buddy check coffee is now all across Canada, and it's basically, if I say a veteran or a first responder, buddy check, they'll go, yeah, I'm okay. No, real buddy check. Cut the BS. We want what's really going on,
right?
And we can go for a coffee. A lot of people let's go out for a beer and talk about your problems. Alcohol is probably not. It's definitely not a good idea when you're having a mental health break kind of thing.
No.
So what we do is we can do it in person, which is always the best way. But obviously, with the current situation, we have to take precautions. But you can do it online. You can do it by FaceTime or Facebook Messenger, and basically all we do is have a coffee and chat away, and we'll listen. I'm not there to give anybody. The person hosting Buddy Check Coffee is not there to give you any kind of professional advice or be a psychiatrist or tell you his problems. They're there to listen and just chat, and you're in a friendly, safe environment. And if you need services, you need help, we'll get you the contacts of the people that can help you. And now that's all across Canada. It's, all the legions know about it.
Yeah.
And it works really well. Obviously, I invite first responders and LEOs to that as well, and some other people do as well. But mental health isn't just for veterans, first responders and LEOs, it's for Joe public as well.
Well, yeah.
And when someone says, well, my PTSD is worse than yours because I went to war, and I call BS and that, it's rubbish. You've either got PTSD or if you're not, and you can have that. You can have PTSD from a childhood trauma, you could be assaulted,
Exactly.
you could slip and trip on the sidewalk, bang your head, so you get a head trauma injury which can cause you PTSD.
Yeah.
So when someone says to me, oh, you've got real PTSD because you're a veteran, and because they look at my medals and go, oh, you must know what you're talking. No, I use my medals, I use I use what I do to get in the door and to publicise the help that is there. If anyone's suffering, anyone listening to this, it does need help, mental health. Canadian Mental Health Association has got a fantastic website and a lot of tips, and the Facebook page as well. There's a lot of tips, there's a lot of handy things that you can do. You can contact them for your local resources, or you can just Google, how do I get mental health in whatever town or city you're in, and what are the resources, and it pops up. It really is that simple. But people are afraid to reach out and ask for them.
But more open now, though, Joe, than it used to be. Like I'm also ADHD, and I found that out when I was 58. I'm a classic example of it, in fact, struggled with, I failed grade 3, and then I failed grade 7 3 times, and then I got a job when I was 14, and during that period for a while they thought they may have to send me to the mentally challenged school, and but fortunately they didn't. So I became a furniture maker, and then from there and did the not so formal education, as we understand it, and did quite well regardless of it. But so we are, as you know, I wrote a book, and I think I gave you a copy.
Yeah, I've got a copy. Yep.
Yeah, and I'm writing another one that is now pretty much done. Will come out actually in June. It's ADHD. Is the topic, and I refer to it as superpower, but again, something that had a stigma attached, and still does to a certain extent, and I found it very, very important to share that with as many people as I can, and as you know, I am a fairly frequent speaker in different occasions, and I usually include those things about PTSD for one, and what is around it. The other one is the inner child is something not always well understood, and then ADHD, which I believe is very important, but it is becoming more in the open, and I hope that my book will also help that process, and to hear people like you talking about PTSD. Very important. Inner child, I was not familiar with, but for me, it became an issue when again, going back to the Second World War, my mom and 3 kids, and a war setting and no support, it became the fear of losing that one parent.
Yeah, not a normal childhood.
Yeah. Exactly, and but counselling was available for it. Although in my case that was when I was nearly 60. But and again, with you making references to when that there are facilities available is important. Speaking about it as you do and others is important about it, and
it's definitely when I got when I got the diagnosis back a few months later, it was such a relief, and things started to make sense. And I can't emphasise enough, if you're having problems, get it checked out. Go and ask for help. You can start off with your doctor, your GP. Go talk to your doctor and go from then. And I'll admit I've got PTSD. It's not an excuse for all behaviours, but it certainly accounts for a lot of it. Get that help. Once you begin, the more knowledge you know about this condition, I don't call it a disease. It's a condition. The more knowledge you get about it, the more courses you can do. I've done a Veterans Transition Network course for 10 days. That saved my life. It really did save my life.
You see, and those things are critical and very important to hear it from people like you and from people like myself about other issues. And then the other thing that I would add to what you're suggesting is to get help, and there is help available. But the other part that is so available to us now is not only social media, but just Googling and just looking on the web to become informed. And there are books out, that for the different areas. In particular, if I look at the one that I'm doing or have done, and that now will print hopefully in May and then be available in June, is one that's not based on the medical. I'm not a medic, obviously, or anything like that, but simply talking about that, probably dealing with about 15, 16, 17 different people that have are diagnosed as ADHD at different stages in their life, and have been dealing with it successfully in a lot of cases, and as to what and how and all those particular stories. And then obviously I'm also writing my own story around it. So I believe it will be very, very helpful, for a lot of people to look for those kind of sources, not only my book, but also many other books that are available.
I've been part of the Royal Canadian Legion basically since the first time I came to Prince George. Within a month of me being in Canada, I joined the Legion. And I've met thousands of veterans with PTSD. And I can tell you right now, not just PTSD, other health issues and traumas. I can tell you right now, there's no one magic pill cure-all that fixes everything. No. There's many varied and interesting treatments, and occasionally I still hear a new one. I mean, I'll ask, once I've introduced myself, and hi, I'm Joe Elliott, pleased to meet you, I'm ex-Royal Navy. It sounds like a joke, but that's what I do wherever I go. I have my business cards with me, and when I recognise someone I think is a veteran or a first responder, I'm pretty good at spotting them. I've got veteran radar, as it's called. Once I get chatting to them, and sometimes they'll open up and say, well, actually, I've got some issues, or I've got PTSD or whatever. And I said, so I asked them this question, and I said, how do you handle your stuff? How do you handle your shit? And they go, well, I do this, I do that. For some they use as exercise. It could be a hobby, it could be gardening, it could be knitting, it could be sport, it could be fishing, it could be family, it could be religion. Marijuana is really good for a lot of people. It's not for everyone. I've seen some fantastic results through personal friends of mine that have used. They've gone off of, they used to have blister packs of medicine that Veterans Affairs issued them to deal with their conditions and their injuries. And they've gone away from all these medicines and side effects to marijuana, and it's helped them immensely. But it's not for everyone. I was in Disneyland a couple of years ago, and I spotted an obvious American serviceman, but he was in a Disney uniform. He was doing security for Disney, and he's wearing his Disney shirt and tie, but he's got a US Marine Corps tie pin and a belt, and he's wearing his hat like a drill sergeant. So I walked up to him, "How you doing, Gunny?" And straight away he's smiling and he's laughing. And he was an Afghanistan veteran. And I asked him the same question: "How do you handle your stuff?" And he said, "I work in Disneyland." And I went, "What?" Because the last thing I was thinking as a veteran would be to be surrounded by thousands of people.
Yeah.
He said, "Yeah, but I'm surrounded by thousands of positive people."
Yeah.
And great energy. And he's now doing he's what, 40,000 a year working at Disneyland, or he could be earning 200,000 doing security. But no, he's happy. And he said, "Why?" I said, "Why he does it? It's because he gets his sleep at night."
Yeah.
So I wish maybe I should write it up. Maybe I should take a page out of your book and write my experiences down.
Why not?
Maybe I really do need to, or maybe get a ghostwriter. But what works? And I met a Vietnam veteran in Vegas, and he used religion, and he done 2 years in country, in Vietnam, and his handle was religion. And so use whatever works for you. Good things, because there's bad. People use some bad influences, bad handles in it, like the heavy drink or drugs. We know those don't work. But what works for you now might not work for you in the future. So, but it's all about education. You might have to change things up a bit. You might have to change your routine. You might have to get another hobby. Tell you what works for me is what I do to help myself. Obviously, believe it or not, what you eat, the way you eat. If you're going to have alcohol, have it in moderation, and just be aware of what your intake is. Exercise, without a doubt. Family is obviously a good thing, but the way I help, me helping fellow veterans and getting the results back, and then realise that there's help there, and then they start to help themselves, and then they get well, and then they start to help other people. When that comes back to me, it's a euphoria.
Yeah.
I don't get paid for this, and that's how I handle my
satisfaction.
stuff. Yeah,
right?
without a doubt.
Yeah. So if you kind of look back then, Joe, that as a veteran, obviously you have had the exposure to all the things around veterans. It's always interesting for you and me to talk, in particular the things that that both make us veterans, and the other part of having PTSD has been part of my life, has been part of yours, and then in your way helping people recognizing it and developing tools to deal with it. I've done the same, either through writing or speaking. I think it's very, very important to speak about it and to remove the myth around it or the stigma that sometimes is involved. So, so kind of looking forward then, you obviously have a relatively young family still.
Yeah.
And
from 14-year-old down to baby.
Yeah, so which is beautiful, and then have an active life in terms of your medic things that you do out in the mining in northern British Columbia.
I'll go all over Alberta, southern BC. I've even been out to Saskatchewan.
Put you away from home quite a bit, right?
Yeah, we took a year off paternity leave there. So I've just started back again.
Yeah.
But can I just? Yeah. You mentioned our experiences as veterans. For any veterans that think that they don't deserve the term veteran, let me explain to you what a veteran is. A veteran that's someone who's volunteered, who's signed up, and who's served the country. If you're a veteran, you don't have to go to war. No. Okay, I've been to war. I've done 4 tours of the Gulf, 3 times at war, and I've done Sierra Leone. That's what my service is. But it really makes no difference. If you're a veteran and you need help,
Yeah.
We will help you. I don't care if you've been to war, if you've been shot at, been blown up, or not done anything, not been deployed, just stayed in Canada. You're a veteran.
Exactly.
It doesn't care. I don't care if you were a reservist or regular force. You're a veteran.
Exactly.
Right? And if you're a veteran's family, if you need help as well, we
Yeah.
will help you.
Yeah.
The help is there. So please, to the guys that don't think themselves as veterans,
Yeah.
you served, you volunteered, you're a veteran. The guys and the girls.
And be proud of it.
And be proud of it. And the girls as well. There's a lot of, we forget there's all the women
Yeah.
that have served Canada. They're veterans too, but no one talks to them. They usually talk to their husband and say, what unit were you in? And it's the woman that's a veteran. So it's quite embarrassing for them. We've lost women at war as well.
Exactly. And thanking them for their service is very important.
I found that very hard when I first came to Canada, when someone started thanking me for my service. In the UK, it's slightly different. It's a mindset. In the UK, where the public, the general public, is not as demonstrative as Canadians are. When I first wore my Legion uniform, my medals, complete strangers are coming up to me and thanking me for my service. I'm like that. Oh,
yeah.
I don't know you. Why are you thanking me? But I couldn't get my head around that.
Yeah.
But now I'm a Canadian now. I got my citizenship nearly 4 years ago now, and I'm a very proud Canadian. I understand it now, and I say thank you. And I understand, but they might be thanking me, but they're thanking every other serviceman that's been before me, service person that's been before me as well.
And then being able to give back, and as you do, and as I do, and as many others do.
It's a very important thing for me and my family to recognise what our service personnel do and what they have done in the past. And it's a big thing. My kids know all about it. Even my baby's getting told the stories now.
Yeah. Joe.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.